Welcome to the English Civil War and Restoration Notes. Remember that you can stop and pause the video or rewind if you miss something at any point during our notes. So here we go. When we're talking about the English Civil War, we're going to be looking at the rights of Englishmen and how things change, for the most part, with the English Civil War. So what actually happens? Well, the problem starts when Elizabeth I has no children. And so they call up her cousin and ask him if he would be willing to take the throne when Elizabeth dies. So Parliament actually writes up a law that says when Elizabeth dies, James will get the throne. James will be the heir to the throne. And James is a cousin of Elizabeth. Now, if you look, this is a family tree of the House of Tudor. Okay, Elizabeth, find Elizabeth, the number 2 over here on the left. Her father is Henry VIII. Okay, his father was Henry VII. Okay, and remember, Elizabeth's brother Edward ruled first, except he died young, so Mary took over. Mary got married to Philip II of Spain. Okay, so when Mary died, Philip thought that he should be king, but it didn't go to him, it went to Elizabeth. When Elizabeth dies, it goes through the cousins to the next in line, which is going to be James I. And so today, with these notes, we're going to be looking at the House of Stuart, or the family of James I. Okay, so his son is going to be Charles I. Charles is going to have a bunch of kids. His first child to rule is going to be Charles II. His second child to rule is going to be James II, who gets kicked out by his daughter, William, who marries her cousin Mary. Mary, who marries her cousin William. Sorry, that was confusing. So we're going to be talking about what happens with these guys. So James is the son of Mary, Queen of Scots, Elizabeth's cousin. He's going to be the author of the Divine Right of Kings. Now, the idea had always been around that God provided divine authority to the kings, and so the king got their power from God. James is the one that actually writes it down in words, so that way it becomes kind of an actual doctrine rather than just a belief. And so what he writes is this. He writes, "The state of monarchy is the supremest thing upon earth, for kings are not only God's lieutenants upon earth, and sit upon God's throne, but even by God himself they are called gods." So they're kind of like mini gods. If you think of the Greek pantheon, how you have the king of the gods, Zeus, and the couple other gods, he's kind of saying it's a similar system to that. Then he says, "Kings justly gods, for they exercise a divine power upon earth." I would highlight that in your text, on your notes. He said, "God hath power to create or destroy, make or unmake at his pleasure, to give life or send death, to judge and to be judged, nor accountable to none, to raise low things and to make high things low at his pleasure, and the like power of kings." So what he's saying in this last part is, God is the one that gives me as king power, and God is the only person that can take away my power as king. It's not the people, it's not the little peasants running around on their fields that give me power and can take away my power. The only person that can take away power is God. So that's the divine right of kings. Now, during James's reign, they're also going to do an English translation of the Bible, which is called the King James Bible. This is one of the most famous translations. They're still sold today. We're going to see British colonization of America officially begin. Under Elizabeth, we had attempts at it. We kind of claimed land, founded Virginia as a claim, but we didn't settle any people there successfully. The whole Roanoke colony didn't work out. And so with James, we actually found Jamestown as the first successful English settlement in the Americas. But James is going to have a lot of conflicts with Parliament over money and whether he has money to do what he wants. So that's going to be an interesting little battle. But it's going to get more interesting after that. Now, his son is going to be Charles I. And Charles I is going to... Don't look at that yet. Whoop, you can still see it. Shucks. Okay, well, Charles I is going to rule, and then he's going to be interrupted by the English Civil War and the rule of Oliver Cromwell, and then his son Charles II will take the throne. So from this, we already know that that Oliver Cromwell and his battle against the government, the monarchy, is not going to end. So remember, a monarchy is a form of government where it is ruled by one person, generally a hereditary family has rule, as opposed to a republic, which is people electing their representatives to make laws. So the problem is this: king versus parliament. So Charles I wants to do things that parliament won't let him. The House of Commons is the lower house in parliament. They also have what's called the House of Lords, which is like our Senate. And so the main issue is that King Charles I needs money to pay for the wars that he wants to fight. He wants to go fight France again. And he's also got some issues with the Irish are rebelling, the Scots are going to rebel, and he's supposed to consult Parliament with the Magna Carta. But, you know, Parliament's not always going to give him money. So Charles does go to Parliament, and he asks Parliament to grant him some loans for these wars. And Parliament comes back and presents him with what's called the Petition of Right. And that's this document here, that's the picture. And in the Petition of Rights, they're going to tell Charles, very similar to what the Magna Carta says, but they make specific things where the king has to consult Parliament. So they're making the Magna Carta more specific. They say no levying tax without Parliament's consent. So you cannot raise taxes or create a new tax without Parliament. No imposing martial law on civilians. Martial law is like military law, where you might have a curfew, you aren't necessarily guaranteed a trial if they arrest you, things like that. No imprisonment without due process or a trial. No quartering or housing of troops. So what's going to happen is Charles is going to get this, and he is going to say, I don't think I like this. So Charles is going to dismiss Parliament. He tells them to go home, and he refuses to call them together for 11 years, because technically the king is the one who invites Parliament there to help him rule, and the king is supposed to consult Parliament. That doesn't always work out. So Parliament doesn't meet for 11 years, and Charles is going to impose martial law or a military law on the country of England. Let's add Charles I here to make sure that we know who we're talking about. And so with the martial law, there's a curfew. You aren't necessarily going to get a trial if you've done something wrong. If you're arrested, you might just get thrown in jail and tortured. Not a good thing that people want. The other thing that Charles does that really makes people mad is there's a new group of religious people in England at this time. And they're kind of looking at the Church of England and they're saying, I'm not really happy with how the Church of England is doing things. It's starting to look a little bit more like the Catholic Church. Our prayers are becoming a lot more like the Catholic prayers. We're not really okay with this. We're going to turn and look at Calvin. We like the ideas of John Calvin. And so they become known as the Calvinist Puritans. These Calvinist Puritans will eventually leave England and come to another part of the world. But we'll talk about that in a minute. So what happens? Charles wants religious conformity. He wants everyone to be exactly the same religiously. And so he is going to dismiss the non-Anglican conforming clergy. If you are not doing what he wants as an Anglican preacher and making it more like the Catholic Church, you're gone. Clergy is the priests and the ministers. He's going to create a book of common prayer. So everybody's praying the exact same way. And he's going to use courts, religious courts, to enforce compliance. Things like they're going to end up torturing people. They're going to end up burning books so that people aren't getting different ideas, because different ideas do not promote conformity. What happens is, when this goes on, the Puritans get really mad. Some start to leave for America. Lots are going to follow. And other Puritans from Parliament are going to fight back. So, in the meantime, Charles is making people mad about religion. Charles is making people mad about war and martial law. And so Charles is going to have a little uprising happen between the Irish and the Scots, up north and to the west. And what happens is Charles needs more money. And so Charles is going to bring Parliament back together. He's going to ask them to give him another loan. They say no. And so he leads troops to the House of Commons to arrest the leaders of Parliament. This starts the English Civil War. We're going to have two sides form, the Roundheads and the Cavaliers. And they're going to end up fighting. Now, if you download this, there are two videos that you can watch. The one at the top is the English Civil War song. The one at the bottom is the Bob Hale news report that we watched in class. So the two groups that form are the Roundheads versus Cavaliers. Roundheads are sometimes called parliamentarians because they support Parliament. Cavaliers are sometimes called royalists because they support the king. Make sure you know both of those that are equal to each other. So, who wins the war? Well, Parliament's going to win the war, which means that the leader of Parliament, a guy named Oliver Cromwell, is going to take control. And what happens is Oliver Cromwell does not like the monarchy at all. And so he's going to have Charles I beheaded. They're going to cut his head off, and they put his head on a spike. And so then Cromwell is going to create what is known as the Commonwealth Period, or a republic or a state ruled by elective representatives. This is where Parliament comes back and is the sole governing body of the entire country. There's no monarchy. Now, a lot of people are opposed to this because they still like the king. It's very ineffective. Nobody can make decisions. And so Oliver Cromwell comes back and forms a military dictatorship. He essentially becomes an absolute ruler. You can't call him an absolute monarch. He is not a king. He is a dictator, which could be called an absolute ruler. But the problem is, Cromwell dies without a strong ruler to succeed him. His son succeeds him, follows him, but his son is really weak. So, what happens is, everybody is going to get together and invite the son of Charles I, the oldest son, named Charles as well, back to become the new king. And that's going to lead into our second part of notes.